Welcome to Storybook Nook. Learn English through daily mysterious stories under the moonlight.
Storybook Nook. How not to miss this video if you can't finish it right now? First, give us a like, and then click the save button. A new window will pop up, and you can save it to watch later if you can't watch the entire video right now. This is an effective way to create your own English learning playlist. Let's get started.
Shaggy Journey of Courage, Chapter 1, An Unlikely Hero. Norville's Shaggy Rogers, known to most simply as Shaggy, was never your typical hero. Tall, lanky, with a perpetual scruff and an insatiable appetite, Shaggy often found himself caught between his intense love for food and his overwhelming fear of danger. Born in Coolsville, USA, Shaggy's life had always been one of comfort and simplicity until the fateful day he met Scooby-Doo. Shaggy grew up in a loving home with his parents and his younger sister, Sugi. His parents often joked about Shaggy's bottomless pit of a stomach, which seemed to be a family trait passed down from his grandfather. It wasn't unusual for Shaggy to clear out the fridge in one sitting, much to his mother's bemusement. Despite his carefree nature, Shaggy had a kind heart and an infectious sense of humor that endeared him to everyone who knew him. It was in high school where Shaggy's life took an unexpected turn. One lazy summer afternoon, while walking through the park, Shaggy heard a whimpering sound coming from behind a bush. Curiosity piqued, he pushed aside the branches to find a brown Great Dane puppy with soulful eyes and a wagging tail. The puppy, covered in mud and looking thoroughly lost, immediately bounded towards Shaggy, knocking him over and slobbering him with kisses. "Like, hey there, little guy." Shaggy laughed, trying to wipe off the slobber. "Where did you come from?" A collar around the puppy's neck revealed his name, Scooby-Doo. After a fruitless search for the owner, Shaggy decided to take the puppy home. Little did he know, this chance encounter would mark the beginning of a lifelong friendship and a series of adventures that would change his life forever. As the years went by, Shaggy and Scooby became inseparable. They were a dynamic duo, known around Coolsville for their antics and insatiable hunger. Shaggy's easygoing nature complemented Scooby's playful spirit, and together they got into all sorts of harmless trouble. Their favorite activity was exploring abandoned places and pretending to solve mysteries, which usually ended with them spooking themselves and running off in a fit of giggles. Shaggy's love for food was legendary. His diet consisted of mountains of sandwiches, pizza, and just about anything else he could get his hands on. He was a walking contradiction, able to eat his weight in food and still remain rail-thin. It was this shared love for food that cemented his bond with Scooby. They spent countless hours concocting outrageous snacks and meals, often resulting in hilariously disastrous kitchen experiments. Despite his carefree exterior, Shaggy harbored a deep-seated fear of the unknown. Ghosts, monsters, and the supernatural were enough to send him into a full-blown panic. His vivid imagination didn't help matters. Every creak in the floor or rustle of the wind became a potential spectre waiting to pounce. Scooby, for all his size and bark, shared Shaggy's fears. The two would often find themselves hiding under tables or in closets at the slightest hint of something spooky. Shaggy's life took another turn when he met Fred Jones, Daphne Blake, and Velma Dinkley in high school. Fred, with his unshakable confidence and leadership skills, quickly became the de facto leader of their group. Daphne, with her keen sense of fashion and adventurous spirit, brought a touch of glamour to their gang. Velma, the brains of the operation, had an insatiable curiosity and a knack for solving puzzles. Together, they formed Mystery Inc., a team dedicated to solving mysteries and unmasking villains. Shaggy and Scooby were initially reluctant to join Fred, Daphne, and Velma on their mystery-solving adventures. The prospect of facing real-life ghosts and monsters was far from appealing. However, the promise of free food and the unwavering support of their friends convinced them to give it a shot. Their first few cases were anything but smooth. Shaggy and Scooby's cowardice often led to chaotic chases and near misses, but their luck and resourcefulness always seemed to save the day. One memorable case involved the old lighthouse on the edge of Coolsville. Local legends spoke of a ghostly lighthouse keeper who haunted the cliffs, leading ships astray with his phantom light. The gang decided to investigate after a series of mysterious shipwrecks occurred in the area. Shaggy and Scooby, terrified by the tales, were reluctant to join, but were coaxed along with promises of Scooby snacks and a picnic by the sea. The investigation was filled with the usual mix of terror and hilarity. Shaggy and Scooby, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a basket of snacks, found themselves in the thick of the action. They stumbled upon secret passageways, hidden doors, and eventually the ghostly figure itself. Their fear reached a crescendo when they were cornered by the apparition in the lighthouse tower. "Like, this is it, Scoob. We're done for," Shaggy wailed, clutching Scooby for dear life. "Rah, Raggy!" Scooby whimpered, equally terrified. But as luck would have it, Shaggy tripped over a loose floorboard, sending them both crashing into a hidden lever. The lever activated a trapdoor, revealing a secret room below. The ghostly figure, startled by the sudden turn of events, stumbled and fell, unmasking himself as Captain Cutler, a disgruntled former sailor seeking revenge. Despite their fear, Shaggy and Scooby's accidental discovery led to the resolution of the mystery. The gang celebrated their victory with a hearty meal, and Shaggy and Scooby were hailed as heroes. This pattern repeated itself in many cases, with Shaggy and Scooby's bumbling bravery playing a crucial role in solving mysteries. Through their adventures, Shaggy began to grow in unexpected ways. His fear was still very much a part of him, but he learned to face it head-on, relying on his friends and his bond with Scooby to get through the scariest situations. The gang's unwavering support and belief in him bolstered his confidence, helping him to see that true bravery wasn't the absence of fear, but the ability to confront it. Shaggy's journey from a fearful, food-loving teenager to a crucial member of Mystery Inc. was one of growth and self-discovery. His adventures with the gang not only strengthened his friendship with Scooby, but also taught him invaluable lessons about courage, loyalty, and the power of teamwork. Despite the fear and chaos that often accompanied their cases, Shaggy wouldn't trade his life with Mystery Inc. for anything. He had found his place in the world, and with his friends by his side, he was ready to face whatever mysteries came their way. Chapter 2: The Haunted Carnival. It was a crisp autumn evening when Mystery Inc. received a mysterious invitation. The gang had just finished a particularly grueling case involving a haunted mansion on the outskirts of Coolsville. Exhausted yet satisfied with their latest success, they gathered in the living room of their shared headquarters, an old yet cozy house filled with mementos from their numerous adventures. "Mail's here," Daphne announced, walking in with a stack of letters. She sorted through them, her curiosity piqued by a large ornate envelope sealed with a wax stamp. "This looks interesting," she said, holding up the envelope for everyone to see. Fred took the envelope and carefully broke the seal. Inside was an invitation written in elegant calligraphy. "Dear Mystery Inc., you are cordially invited to the reopening of the Coolsville Carnival. Your presence is requested to investigate the strange occurrences that have plagued our beloved attraction. Please join us tomorrow evening for a night of fun, frights, and hopefully a solution to our mystery. Sincerely, Mr. Samuel Oldman, carnival owner." "A haunted carnival? Zoinks!" Shaggy exclaimed, his eyes widening in fear. "Can't we, take a break and just chill for once?" "Come on, Shaggy," Velma said with a reassuring smile. "You know we can't resist a good mystery, especially one at a carnival. It'll be fun, and who knows, there might be some tasty carnival food." At the mention of food, Shaggy's and Scooby's ears perked up. "Carnival food?" Shaggy echoed, his fear momentarily forgotten. "Okay, I'm in, but only for the food." The next evening, the gang arrived at the Coolsville Carnival. The once bustling attraction had fallen into disrepair over the years, and its reopening was supposed to breathe new life into it. However, rumors of ghostly apparitions and strange noises had kept visitors away, leaving the carnival eerily deserted. "Looks like we have the place to ourselves," Fred remarked as they walked through the creaking gates. The carnival grounds were dimly lit, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with every flicker of the lights. They were greeted by Mr. Samuel Oldman, a tall, thin man with a gaunt face and a nervous demeanor. "Thank you for coming, Mystery Inc., he said, shaking their hands. "I hope you can help us get to the bottom of these strange happenings. The carnival's future depends on it. Don't worry, Mr. Oldman, Fred assured him. We'll get to the bottom of this. Mr. Oldman handed them a map of the carnival grounds and pointed out the areas where the most activity had been reported. The Ferris wheel, the Hall of Mirrors, and the old haunted house attraction. The gang decided to split up to cover more ground. Fred and Daphne headed towards the Ferris wheel, while Velma went to investigate the Hall of Mirrors. Shaggy and Scooby, much to their dismay, were assigned to check out the haunted house. Like, why do we always get the scariest places? Shaggy muttered as they approached the decrepit building. The haunted house loomed before them, its weathered facade and broken windows giving it a menacing appearance. Riously, Scooby agreed, his tail tucked between his legs. With a deep breath, Shaggy pushed open the creaky door, and they stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. As they ventured deeper into the house, the floorboards creaked under their weight, echoing through the empty hallways. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. "Zoinks! Did you hear that, Scoob?" Shaggy whispered, his voice trembling. Let's not find out," Scooby replied, already inching towards the exit. Despite their fear, they pressed on, driven by the promise of Scooby snacks and the desire to help their friends. As they climbed the rickety staircase, they heard faint whispers and saw shadows moving at the edge of their vision. Each step was a test of their courage, but they knew they had to see it through. Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne were at the Ferris wheel, examining the old machinery. "It looks like it hasn't been used in years," Fred observed, shining his flashlight on the rusted gears. Daphne nodded. "But if someone is trying to sabotage the carnival, this would be a perfect place to start. Imagine the panic if this thing suddenly stopped working with people on it." As they investigated, they heard a noise coming from one of the nearby booths. They approached cautiously, only to find a small group of carnival workers huddled together, whispering nervously. "Excuse us," Fred said, causing the group to jump. "We're here to help. Can you tell us what you've seen?" One of the workers, a young woman named Lisa, stepped forward. "It's the ghost," she said, her voice shaking. "We've seen it near the Ferris wheel and the Hall of Mirrors. It's tall, with glowing eyes, and it makes this awful moaning sound." "Thank you, Lisa," Daphne said kindly. "We'll do everything we can to solve this mystery." At the Hall of Mirrors, Velma was meticulously examining each mirror, looking for clues. She knew that mirrors could be used to create illusions and hide secret passages. As she ran her fingers along the edges of one particularly large mirror, she felt a slight breeze. "This is it," she muttered, pressing on the mirror. It swung open to reveal a hidden corridor. Velma took a deep breath and entered, her flashlight illuminating the narrow passage. Back in the haunted house, Shaggy and Scooby finally reached the attic. The room was filled with old furniture covered in sheets, and the air was thick with dust. As they looked around, they heard the same whispering voices, clearer this time. Let's get out of here, Scoob!" Shaggy stammered, but before they could move, a figure appeared at the far end of the attic. It was tall, with glowing eyes and an eerie, translucent glow. "Ruro!" Scooby yelped, grabbing Shaggy's arm. "Run, Scoob!" Shaggy yelled, and they bolted down the stairs, the ghostly figure in hot pursuit. They raced through the haunted house, knocking over furniture and crashing through doors until they burst outside, panting and wide-eyed. "Fred! Daphne! Velma!" Shaggy shouted, waving frantically. The rest of the gang came running, their faces etched with concern. "What happened?" Fred asked. "Ghost! Attic! Big, glowing eyes!" Shaggy gasped between breaths. "It chased us all the way down," Scooby added, nodding vigorously. "We need to regroup," Velma said, emerging from the Hall of Mirrors. "I found a hidden passageway that might explain how the ghost is getting around so quickly." The gang reconvened at the central plaza of the carnival, sharing their findings. They formulated a plan to lure the ghost into the open and unmask it. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, they set their plan into motion. Shaggy and Scooby, armed with their favorite bait, Scooby snacks, took their positions near the haunted house. Velma hid near the Hall of Mirrors, ready to close off the hidden passageway. Fred and Daphne positioned themselves near the Ferris wheel, ready to spring the trap. As the night wore on, the ghostly figure reappeared, drawn by the scent of the Scooby snacks. Shaggy and Scooby held their ground, despite their trembling knees. The ghost approached, its eyes glowing eerily in the darkness. "Now, Velma!" Fred shouted. Velma activated the mechanism to close off the passageway, trapping the ghost in the open. Fred and Daphne rushed in, using a net to capture the figure. With the ghost immobilized, Velma stepped forward and carefully removed the mask, revealing Mr. Samuel Oldman himself. "Mr. Oldman?" the gang exclaimed in unison. "Why?" Fred asked, bewildered. Mr. Oldman sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I'm sorry. The carnival was failing, and I thought that if I created a ghostly legend, it would attract more visitors. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand." "Well, you almost succeeded in scaring everyone away for good," Daphne said, shaking her head. "Creating a ghost was wrong, but you still have a chance to save the carnival by running it honestly," Velma added. The police arrived, and Mr. Oldman was taken into custody. The gang stayed behind to help the carnival workers clean up and prepare for a legitimate reopening. Shaggy and Scooby, despite their fear, felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. "Like we did it, Scoob," Shaggy said, patting his best friend on the back. "We actually helped save the carnival." "Rhea, Raggy," Scooby agreed, wagging his tail. "And we got lots of snacks too." As the night came to a close, the gang gathered around a table filled with carnival treats. They laughed and recounted their adventure, the bond between them stronger than ever. Shaggy realized that despite his fears, he was capable of bravery and heroism, especially with his friends by his side. Mystery Inc. drove off into the night, ready for their next adventure, with Shaggy more confident and courageous than ever before. Chapter 3: Clues and Courage. The night was still young as the gang sat around a table in the central plaza, munching on carnival treats and discussing their next move. Shaggy and Scooby, despite their earlier fright, had regained some of their usual enthusiasm, spurred on by the promise of more food and the comforting presence of their friends. "We need to figure out why Mr. Oldman went to such lengths to scare people away," Fred said, tapping his chin thoughtfully. "There has to be more to this than just trying to boost ticket sales." "Right," Velma agreed. "People don't usually resort to creating ghostly legends without a bigger motive. We need to dig deeper and see what else we can uncover." Daphne nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "Let's start by looking through the old carnival records. Maybe we'll find something that explains all of this." The gang split up once more, this time with a clearer sense of purpose. Fred and Daphne headed to the carnival's administration office, while Velma went to examine the hidden passageway in the Hall of Mirrors more thoroughly. Shaggy and Scooby, armed with their trusty flashlight and a bag of Scooby snacks, were tasked with searching the old storage sheds for any clues. As they approached the storage area, Shaggy couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The sheds were dark and foreboding, their shadows stretching out like grasping hands in the dim light. "Like, why do we always get the creepiest places?" he muttered, glancing nervously at Scooby. "Rhea, let's hurry," Scooby agreed, his tail wagging uncertainly. They started with the first shed, pushing open the heavy door with a loud creak. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of mildew permeated the space. Old carnival props and equipment were piled haphazardly, creating a labyrinth of forgotten relics. Shaggy took a deep breath and stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Okay, Scoob, let's see what we can find." They began to sift through the piles, their eyes peeled for anything unusual. It wasn't long before Scooby's nose twitched, picking up an unfamiliar scent. "Raggy, over here," he said, pawing at a stack of crates. Shaggy followed Scooby's lead, moving the crates aside to reveal a hidden compartment in the floor. "Good job, Scoob," he exclaimed, giving his friend a pat on the head. They pried open the compartment to find a dusty old box filled with papers and photographs. "Looks like we hit the jackpot," Shaggy said, carefully lifting the box out and setting it on a nearby table. They began to sort through the contents, uncovering old financial records, maps, and blueprints of the carnival grounds. Meanwhile, in the administration office, Fred and Daphne were making their own discoveries. The office was in disarray, with papers scattered across the desk and filing cabinets left open. "Someone's definitely been looking for something," Daphne observed, picking up a crumpled piece of paper from the floor. Fred nodded, his eyes scanning the room. "Let's see what we can find before they come back." They began to search the room methodically, going through drawers and cabinets. Daphne found a set of old ledgers detailing the carnival's expenses and income. "Fred, look at this," she said, pointing to a series of entries. "These numbers don't add up. There's a lot of money unaccounted for." Fred leaned over to examine the ledgers, his brow furrowing. "You're right. It looks like someone's been embezzling money from the carnival. This might be the motive we were looking for." Back at the Hall of Mirrors, Velma was making her way through the hidden passageway. The narrow corridor was lined with old photographs and posters depicting the carnival in its heyday. She paused to examine a particularly large photograph showing a young Mr. Oldman standing proudly in front of the Ferris wheel. As she continued down the passageway, she noticed a faint light coming from the end of the corridor. Her curiosity piqued. She moved closer, her flashlight illuminating the space. She found herself in a small, hidden room filled with old documents and personal items. Velma began to sift through the papers, her eyes widening as she uncovered a series of letters addressed to Mr. Oldman. They detailed a plan to buy out the carnival's land and develop it into a shopping mall, with Mr. Oldman standing to make a substantial profit. "This is it," Velma muttered to herself, gathering the letters. This is why he created the ghost story, to scare people away so he could sell the land. She hurried back to the central plaza to share her findings with the rest of the gang. By the time she arrived, Fred and Daphne had returned from the administration office, and Shaggy and Scooby were just coming back from the storage sheds, carrying the box of documents they had found. "Guys, you won't believe what I found," Velma said, holding up the letters. "We've got something too," Fred said, showing Velma the ledgers. "It looks like Mr. Oldman was embezzling money from the carnival." "And we found these hidden in the storage shed," Shaggy added, opening the box to reveal the maps and blueprints. The gang gathered around a table, piecing together the clues they had found. It all pointed to one conclusion. Mr. Oldman had been siphoning money from the carnival and planning to sell the land for a profit. The ghost story was a ruse to drive away visitors and devalue the property, making it easier for him to sell. "We need to confront Mr. Oldman with this evidence," Fred said, his voice firm. "He needs to be held accountable for what he's done." As they made their way to the police station, they couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. They had uncovered the truth and put a stop to Mr. Oldman's scheme. Shaggy and Scooby, despite their initial fear, had played a crucial role in solving the mystery. When they arrived at the police station, they presented their evidence to the authorities. Mr. Oldman was brought in for questioning, and faced with the overwhelming evidence, he confessed to his crimes. The carnival's future was saved, and plans were made to restore it to its former glory. The gang returned to the carnival one last time, standing in the central plaza as the sun began to rise. "We did it, gang," Fred said, a smile spreading across his face. "Another mystery solved. And this time, we saved the carnival," Daphne added, looking around at the familiar sights. "Like, it wasn't easy, but we did it," Shaggy said, giving Scooby a high five. "And we even got some snacks out of it." "Rhea, lots of snacks," Scooby agreed, his tail wagging happily. Velma looked at her friends, a sense of pride and camaraderie filling her heart. "We make a great team," she said. "No matter what, we always stick together and get the job done." As they drove off into the sunrise, the gang felt a renewed sense of purpose. They knew there would always be more mysteries to solve and more adventures to be had. But for now, they were content to enjoy the moment, knowing they had made a difference and brought justice to the Coolsville Carnival. Shaggy, in particular, felt a newfound sense of courage. He had faced his fears and come out on the other side, stronger and more confident. With his friends by his side, he knew he could handle whatever challenges came their way. "Like, we're unstoppable, Scoob," he said, giving his best friend a pat on the head. "Rhea, unstoppable," Scooby echoed, his tail thumping against the seat. As the mystery machine disappeared into the distance, the gang looked forward to their next adventure, ready to take on whatever mysteries the world had to offer. They were Mystery Inc., and nothing could stand in their way. Chapter 4. Unmasking the Villain. As the gang stood in the central plaza, A sense of determination settled over them. They had gathered enough evidence to confront Mr. Oldman, but they needed a plan to unmask him and reveal the truth to everyone at the carnival. "All right, gang," Fred said, rallying his friends. "We need to lure Mr. Oldman into the open and catch him in the act. Once we have him, we can show everyone the evidence and put an end to his schemes." Daphne nodded in agreement. "We should set up a trap in the Hall of Mirrors. It's the perfect place to corner him without causing too much commotion." "Like, can't we just, skip to the part where we eat celebratory snacks?" Shaggy asked, half-jokingly, his nervousness creeping back. "Rua Raggy," Scooby said, shaking his head. "We gotta do this." Velma smiled reassuringly at Shaggy. "Don't worry, Shaggy. With the plan we have in place, it'll be over before you know it. And then we can have all the snacks you want." Shaggy sighed, but nodded. "All right, let's do this." The gang split up once more to prepare for the final showdown. Fred and Daphne headed to the Hall of Mirrors to set up the trap, while Velma and Shaggy worked on gathering the remaining evidence and making sure everything was in place. Scooby was tasked with keeping an eye on Mr. Oldman, making sure he didn't get suspicious. As Fred and Daphne entered the Hall of Mirrors, they carefully mapped out the layout, ensuring they knew the best spots to set up their trap. They placed a series of hidden tripwires and mirrors designed to confuse and disorient Mr. Oldman, leading him straight into their trap. "This will work perfectly," Fred said, stepping back to admire their handiwork. "Once he's in here, he won't have anywhere to run." Daphne nodded, her eyes scanning the room. "We just need to make sure we can get him in here without raising suspicion. We'll need Velma and Shaggy to create a distraction." Meanwhile, Velma and Shaggy were busy organizing the evidence they had collected. They laid out the letters, financial records, and blueprints on a table, making sure everything was easy to understand and clearly pointed to Mr. Oldman's guilt. "Okay, we're ready," Velma said, looking up at Shaggy. "Let's go over the plan one more time." Shaggy took a deep breath and nodded. "Right, we're going to lure Mr. Oldman into the Hall of Mirrors by pretending we found something important. Then, once he's inside, Fred and Daphne will spring the trap." Velma smiled. "Exactly. And once he's caught, we'll present the evidence to everyone and unmask him. Ready?" "Ready as I'll ever be," Shaggy replied, trying to muster some courage. As they made their way back to the central plaza, Scooby came bounding up to them, panting slightly. "Raggy! Relma! He's coming!" Velma and Shaggy exchanged a quick look. "This is it," Velma said. "Let's go." They hurried to intercept Mr. Oldman, who was making his rounds near the main entrance. Velma put on her best innocent expression as she approached him. "Mr. Oldman, we found something you need to see. It's in the Hall of Mirrors." Mr. Oldman's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but he nodded. "All right, lead the way." Shaggy and Scooby followed closely behind as Velma led Mr. Oldman to the Hall of Mirrors. The tension was palpable as they entered the maze of reflective surfaces, the air thick with anticipation. As they moved deeper into the labyrinth, Velma gave a subtle signal to Fred and Daphne, who were hiding nearby. In an instant, the trap was sprung. Mirrors shifted and tripwires snapped into place, creating a dizzying array of reflections that disoriented Mr. Oldman. "What's going on?" Mr. Oldman shouted, spinning around in confusion. Fred and Daphne stepped out from their hiding spots, blocking his escape. "It's over, Mr. Oldman," Fred said, his voice firm. "We know what you've been doing, and we have the evidence to prove it." Mr. Oldman's face twisted in anger and fear as he realized he was caught. "You meddling kids," he growled. "You don't know what you're getting into." Velma stepped forward, holding up the letters and financial records. "We know enough. You've been embezzling money from the carnival and trying to sell the land for a profit. You created the ghost story to scare people away and devalue the property." Mr. Oldman's shoulders slumped in defeat. "All right, you got me, but you'll never catch me." He made a desperate dash toward the exit, but Shaggy and Scooby, driven by a sudden burst of courage, intercepted him. "Like, not so fast," Shaggy said, his voice trembling slightly but resolute. Scooby growled playfully, blocking Mr. Oldman's path. "Rua, you're not going anywhere." With Mr. Oldman cornered and nowhere to run, the gang led him out of the Hall of Mirrors and into the central plaza, where a crowd had gathered, curious about the commotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," Fred called out, addressing the crowd. We've uncovered the truth behind the ghost story and the strange happenings at the carnival. This man, Mr. Oldman, has been behind it all. Velma stepped forward, presenting the evidence to the onlookers. He's been embezzling money from the carnival and planning to sell the land for a profit. The ghost story was just a ruse to scare people away. The crowd murmured in shock and disbelief as the police arrived, taking Mr. Oldman into custody. "You haven't seen the last of me," he snarled as he was led away, but his threats fell on deaf ears. The carnival owner, Mr. Thompson, stepped forward, his expression one of gratitude and relief. "Thank you, Mystery Inc. You've saved the carnival and revealed the truth. We owe you a great debt." Fred smiled, shaking Mr. Thompson's hand. "Just doing our job, sir. We're glad we could help." Daphne nodded. "And we're happy to see the carnival saved. It's a place that brings joy to so many people." As the crowd dispersed, the gang gathered around, their faces lit up with smiles. "We did it, gang," Velma said, her voice filled with pride. Another mystery solved. Shaggy and Scooby high-fived, their earlier fears forgotten in the excitement of their success. "Like we make a pretty good team, huh, Scoob?" "We're a great team," Scooby agreed, his tail wagging enthusiastically. Fred looked at his friends, a sense of camaraderie filling his heart. No matter what, we always stick together and get the job done. That's what makes us Mystery Inc. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the carnival, the gang knew that their adventure was far from over. There would always be more mysteries to solve and more villains to unmask. But for now, they were content to enjoy the moment, knowing they had made a difference and brought justice to the Coolsville Carnival. And so, with hearts full of pride and a renewed sense of purpose, the gang climbed into the mystery machine and drove off into the sunset, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. They were Mystery Inc., and nothing could stand in their way. Chapter 5. Lessons Learned. With the mystery of the haunted carnival finally solved, and Mr. Oldman safely behind bars, the gang decided to take a moment to reflect on their latest adventure. They gathered at their favorite diner, a quaint little spot on the outskirts of Coolsville, where they often went to unwind after a long day of mystery solving. The sun had set, and the diner was bathed in the soft glow of neon lights. The aroma of burgers and fries filled the air, and the sounds of laughter and conversation created a warm, comforting atmosphere. The gang settled into their usual booth, their spirits high after their successful mission. "Man, what a day," Fred said, leaning back in his seat with a satisfied smile. "I don't think I've ever seen a mystery that intense." Daphne nodded in agreement. "It was definitely one of our more challenging cases. But we stuck together and figured it out, just like we always do." Velma adjusted her glasses, her expression thoughtful. "I think we learned a lot from this experience, not just about solving mysteries, but about ourselves and each other." Shaggy and Scooby, already digging into a towering plate of nachos, looked up at Velma. "Like, what do you mean, Velma?" Shaggy asked, curious. Velma smiled. "Well, for one thing, we saw how brave Shaggy and Scooby can be when it really counts. You guys stepped up and helped capture Mr. Oldman, even though you were scared. That takes a lot of courage." Shaggy blushed slightly, but he couldn't hide his pride. "Oh, thanks, Velma. I guess when it comes down to it, we just didn't want to let the gang down." "Raya, we had to help," Scooby added, his tail wagging. "Rians stick together." Fred nodded, his expression serious. "That's something we've always known, but this case really drove it home. No matter how scary things get, we can always rely on each other. It's what makes us a great team." Daphne smiled at her friends, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "We've been through so much together, and every adventure brings us closer. I wouldn't trade it for anything." As they continued to talk, the gang realized that each of them had grown in their own way through their experiences. They had learned to trust their instincts, to support one another, and to never give up, no matter how daunting the challenge. Fred turned to Velma, a thoughtful look on his face. "What about you, Velma? What did you learn from this case?" Velma considered his question for a moment before answering. "I learned that it's important to keep an open mind. Even when things seem impossible or supernatural, there's usually a logical explanation. But at the same time, it's okay to embrace the unknown and be open to new possibilities." Daphne nodded in agreement. And I learned that sometimes we need to look beyond the obvious and dig deeper to find the truth. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Shaggy grinned, his usual playful demeanor returning. And I learned that I can run really fast when I'm scared. The gang burst into laughter, the tension of the past few days melting away. They knew that they would always face challenges and mysteries, but they also knew that they could handle anything as long as they stuck together. As they finished their meal and prepared to leave the diner, Fred raised his glass in a toast. To Mystery Inc. and to all the adventures that lie ahead, may we always find the courage, the wisdom, and the friendship to solve any mystery. Cheers, the gang echoed, clinking their glasses together. The next morning, the gang returned to the Coolsville Carnival to help clean up and ensure that everything was back to normal. The atmosphere was noticeably lighter, and the staff and visitors were in high spirits, relieved that the mystery had been solved. Mr. Thompson, the carnival owner, approached the gang, his face beaming with gratitude. "I can't thank you enough for what you've done. The carnival means so much to the community, and you've saved it from disaster." Fred shook Mr. Thompson's hand. "We're just glad we could help. The carnival is a special place, and it deserves to be enjoyed by everyone." Daphne looked around, taking in the joyful faces of the visitors. "It's wonderful to see everyone happy again. This place has such a magical atmosphere." Velma nodded. "And it's a reminder that sometimes the real magic is the joy and memories we create with each other." As the gang helped with the cleanup, they reflected on the lessons they had learned. They knew that their adventures would continue to test them, but they also knew that they had the strength and the bond to overcome any challenge. Later that evening, the gang gathered at their headquarters to review their notes and update their case files. They carefully documented the details of the haunted carnival case, ensuring that every piece of evidence and every clue was recorded. Fred looked over the files, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. "We've solved a lot of mysteries, but this one will definitely stand out. It's a testament to our teamwork and determination." Daphne smiled. "And it's a reminder that no matter how difficult things get, we can always find a way through if we work together." Velma added, "And it's also a reminder to never stop learning and growing. Every case teaches us something new, and that knowledge makes us better detectives." Shaggy and Scooby, munching on a plate of Scooby snacks, chimed in. "And it's a reminder that even when things are scary, there's always room for a little fun and laughter." The gang laughed, their spirits lifted by the camaraderie and the shared experiences. They knew that their journey was far from over, but they also knew that they were ready for whatever came next. As they wrapped up their meeting, Fred looked at his friends, feeling a deep sense of pride and gratitude. "We've come a long way, and we've faced a lot of challenges, but we've always come out stronger on the other side. I couldn't ask for a better team." Daphne, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby all nodded in agreement, their expressions reflecting the bond they shared. They were more than just a team, they were a family. With the case of the haunted carnival officially closed, the gang decided to take a well-deserved break. They planned a small vacation to a quiet beach town, a place where they could relax and recharge before their next adventure. As they loaded up the mystery machine and hit the road, the gang felt a renewed sense of purpose. They knew that their work was important and that they made a difference in the world. And they knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. The sun set on another successful mystery, but the horizon was filled with the promise of new adventures. The gang drove off into the sunset, their hearts full of hope and excitement for the future. And so, the story of Mystery Inc. continued, with Shaggy, Scooby, Fred, Daphne, and Velma ready to tackle whatever mysteries came their way. They were united by their friendship, their courage, and their unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth. As they journeyed into the unknown, they knew that each mystery would bring new challenges, new lessons, and new memories. And they knew that together they could overcome anything and solve any mystery that crossed their path. The end of one adventure was just the beginning of another, and the gang looked forward to the future with confidence and anticipation. They were Mystery Inc., and their story was far from over.
Thank you for watching the entire video. Please support us by clicking the subscribe button and stay tuned for our upcoming videos.